everyone, and welcome. We'll get started here in just a minute. We have people joining from the waiting room. So we will get started in probably just about 30 seconds to a minute or so. All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started now. My name is Lee Riley. I'm one of the counselors here at High School North. I'm joined this evening by my colleagues, Mrs. Narang, Mr. Maida, Mrs. Godowski, Ms. James, and Mrs. Muth. I want to thank them for joining us. Their role in this evening's program will be to answer questions in the Q&A. We won't necessarily be answering questions right off the bat. We'd like you to listen to what I have to share initially, but as we get toward the end of the slides, they will be trying to answer some questions. Please note that this session this evening is a general presentation designed to give students and parents an overview of the transcript request process and some general rules of the road when it comes to college applications. But we do understand that every student's journey through this post-secondary application process is very unique, and that's what the counselors are here for. With that in mind, if you have specific questions, or if your child has specific questions regarding applications, we would ask that you not include those questions in the chat, but instead reach out to your child's counselor via email or whatever method is most comfortable for you. Because the kids are 17 and 18 years old, we of course would prefer that they ask their own questions, and to that end, counselors are going to host follow-up sessions with students to answer any questions that they have after tonight's slideshow, and those sessions will take place over the following days. So I intend this slideshow to, again, be a general overview. I don't want parents and students to panic and say, he's talking too fast, this is too much information, this is hard to follow, I'm very unclear on this part of the presentation. That's to be expected, because we understand that even though we go through this process every year, that this is new to all students and many parents. So there are going to, of course, be questions that you have as we go through the process, and counselors here are here to support you with those more child-specific inquiries as we go through the fall. So again, I want to thank my fellow panelists for coming today. They're going to turn off their cameras now, but I want to thank them for joining us this evening. Generally, what I'm sharing with you through the slides is all 8 counselors here are walking the kids through the process in the same way at the same time. We are going to be providing them and you with resources we think that will help. A lot of slides in this slideshow have live links that you can use, links to helpful documents or websites that we think will be of use for you. And so we will post this slideshow to our Google Classrooms and to the class of 2025 Google Classroom. Also, this session is, of course, being recorded. It will be a few days before this recording is posted to the WWP website, but we're hoping by next Tuesday or Wednesday, tonight's program will be recorded and will be available for students or parents to watch or rewatch on the district website, on the district YouTube channel, I should say. First, again, I want to thank some of my colleagues for joining us here this evening. Parents and students, if you're not familiar with the department, we have 8 school counselors and 1 student assistance counselor that work with students in the building on a daily basis. We're, of course, working with the students alphabetically, and for most of your students, this will be the year 4 of having our counselors. The one exception would be Mrs. Faith Sabinski, who we are happy to say has joined us this year from Community Middle School. She's replacing Teresa Riley, who took a position at Village Upper Elementary School in West Windsor this September. Mrs. Riley is working closely with Mrs. Sabinski throughout the fall. She will be writing college recommendations for all of Mrs. Sabinski's seniors. And so those two are going to be working collaboratively with your kids. But the first and only point of contact for Mrs. Sabinski's students will be Mrs. Sabinski. And then, of course, she will be collaborating professionally with Mrs. Riley throughout this application process. But that is our team. I'm very proud to be a member of this team. The 8 of us, I was counting it up today, have well over 100 years of experience in college counseling. So even though we can't memorize the rules of the road for 4,000 undergraduate institutions nationally, we are very well versed when it comes to the process. And if we don't have answers, we know where to find answers. So your child's school counselor is a wonderful resource as they go through the process this fall and this winter. Again, tonight is an overview, so I hope to take no more than 30 to 45 minutes, probably closer to 45 minutes. And I just want to go through some things and some terminology that you're going to be encountering already, and as you go through the college application process. But as this is an overview, I just want to start off with some general thoughts that we like to share with all students every year. Number one, trust the process. This process works for every student every year. So even though it might seem a little bit overwhelming in terms of what you're having to balance between schoolwork and these outside applications, you will get through this process. Yes, first marking period this year will be pretty busy. A lot of students will apply to most of their colleges during the first marking period in the months of late October through November. But college applications are accepted throughout the senior year. So we know that we have had some students apply to schools already, and we know that that process will continue through the second and third marking periods as well. So trust this process and trust that that you will make it through in great shape. As you're completing applications and things like college essays and personal statements, just be mindful, students, that colleges and universities are really trying to get to the essence of who you are. And who you are isn't necessarily always reflected in a list of activities. So as you're filling out these applications, focus less on the number of activities that maybe you've participated in and really how that has informed you as an applicant. So tell your unique story, whether that's academically, in terms of your outside interest, your character, things that other people really appreciate about you. That's really the message and the emphasis you want to get across to these college admissions representatives. Also, a lot of our students come into this process and they say, how can I put myself in the best light when I am applying to these competitive colleges? And we really ask students to take a moment to turn that around and to remember that you are interviewing colleges and looking for a best fit for you. So you need to take your interests and passions and marry that with a school that you think is going to give you the most opportunities and the possibilities for success and happiness. And here's a little secret that a lot of students seem to forget through this process is you can be very happy and extremely successful at more than one school. So even though some of you might be focused on a quote unquote dream school or a school that you think matches everything you were looking for, there are a lot of schools out there where you could and will be very happy. So try not to be too hyper focused on one outcome that you can't necessarily control. It's okay to cast a wide net, and you will find success at whatever school you end up attending next fall. As an applicant, you're looking for an environment where you can thrive academically and personally. Spend a lot of time thinking about what the physical location of that campus means for you, urban versus suburban, small community versus large community. Of course, the educational academic opportunities and extracurricular opportunities that each school has. A lot of these schools have similar opportunities. But the feel of the campus when kids visit is often varies greatly from student to student. So for that reason, college visits in the past and moving forward through the fall and even into next spring will become a really important part of your journey. So we want you to be very conscientious about actually getting out to these schools at some point during the process. Remember, and I've said this before, you're not alone in this process. You've got counselors here to support you, students, you have parents to support you, other adults in the building to support you, recommenders, whether those be counselors, teachers, or outside professionals that you've worked with that will put you in the best light possible. So you are not walking through this without resources. So, and lastly, this should also be an exciting process as well. Yes, of course, it will come with some anxiety and things that are outside of your control, but it's also an exciting opportunity as your journey continues beyond graduation next June. So, as often as you can, and I believe one of your senior class advisors mentioned to all the students in your assembly last week on the first day of school or the second day of school, try to enjoy this journey. Try to prioritize your schoolwork during the day with these college applications during the evening. Realize that there will be an end to the college application process, that this is it's a fleeting time. And again, once you get through the fall, there will be other things that you can spend your time on during your senior year and that you can enjoy as you wait for these college admissions decisions. But there's a lot of support through the process, and we really want you to enjoy this journey as well. There are some first steps that I expect a lot of you have already completed. Finalizing your list of schools isn't necessarily one of them. We realize that your school list will be dynamic throughout the fall and even into the spring. So we don't expect that everybody's got a list of 8 to 10 schools right now, and that will never change. When you're creating Common App accounts or a coalition account and you're adding schools to those accounts and completing applications, we realize that you may add and delete schools as you move along, and that's to be expected. So we encourage you to do that. Many of you will have colleges that not only require a transcript from the high school, but they ask for something called a self-reported academic record. So when you're creating your Common App account, you might find that you need to create what's called an SRAR account as well. And there will be a hyperlink for that, at least at one point during the program. I'm not sure whether this is a live link on this screen, but SRAR is something that we've seen an increase in schools that want self-reported academic records in recent years. So that will be yet another account that you will have. Where can parents come in handy? Helping students keep track of usernames and passwords. We would advise that you keep those lists on a common doc or in a common place. Using similar or the same usernames and passwords for multiple schools is definitely encouraged because it will decrease the level of confusion and resetting passwords and things like that. And probably the most important thing for students and parents throughout the fall is to pay attention to application deadlines. Many colleges have rolling admissions, which means you can apply whenever you're ready to apply. But some schools incentivize applications that are completed by a certain date. Popular dates include November 1st and November 15th. So if you have schools that have November 1st or November 15th deadlines, and you're looking to make those deadlines, that will cause you to prioritize some of your applications above others. We all know people, and maybe we are people ourselves, that have organizational challenges. So students, if you're someone that has a little bit trouble keeping track of dates and keeping organized, not only is this a great opportunity to work on those skills, but also to involve your parents. We know that your parents would love to be a resource for you, and they might have great suggestions with how to keep on top of some of these deadlines. And counselors will provide recommendations as well. So creating a Common App account. I expect that the majority of you have already done this. Common App has, over the summer, updates their accounts for the new year. So the screenshots I'm showing have looked very similar for years and years. Um, High School North is, of course, your high school. That's one of the first things you'll be able to list under your education section. Our senior class size is at or around 375. So anytime you see a college ask for your senior class size, you can use that number. Our GPA scale is a 4.0, even though you can earn well above a 4.0 with high grades in honors and advanced placement classes. Our base GPA scale is still a 4.0. And a popular question we get from students is, when I'm filling out the Common App or other applications, what GPA should I report? I see two GPAs on my transcript. I see unweighted and weighted. We would always advise you to just put yourself in the best light possible and report your highest GPA, which for most students is going to be your weighted GPA. Your weighted GPA would just be a better indicator of the rigor of classes that you've taken over your 4 years. So creating a Common App account, you'll find, is pretty easy. Common App has several sections, from who you are as a person, to your family, to your education background, to your testing background, that you will fill out once, and that will get sent to all colleges. So a Common App account is a way to complete things once and then have that same application sent to hundreds of schools nationally. I think it's well over 1,000 schools now accept the Common App, including Rutgers and many other local schools. The second thing you'll do once you create a Common App account is you'll start to add some of the colleges you've been thinking about to your colleges tab. So whether it's the College of New Jersey, New York University, you can add any colleges that you're thinking about. And again, you can edit this list throughout the fall. You will send applications separately from this screen. So colleges that you're adding or deleting, that's okay. That's again a dynamic process. When you add colleges, when you add at least one school, you'll be asked to sign a FERPA release. And now you might have heard the word FERPA before. It's kind of similar to HIPAA in the healthcare field. FERPA is basically your privacy rights, and the school, including your recommenders, your counselor, are not allowed to release information about you until you sign a FERPA waiver. So once you sign the FERPA waiver on Common App and you match that up with your Naviance account, we will then be clear as your counselors and your teachers to send documents directly from High School North to your schools. Some Common App schools and outside colleges that don't accept Common App will allow you to invite other recommenders. So this could be a high school or a rec sports coach, a member of the clergy, a club advisor inside or outside of the school, a music teacher, basically another adult or mentor in your life that you believe knows you well and can really speak to your strengths as an applicant. There's an opportunity to invite recommenders through Common App, and that option will appear for most schools. So you'll see I've listed the College of New Jersey here as an example of a school that will allow you to invite recommenders. You simply enter the email address of the recommender, and they will get an invitation to upload to your Common App account. There are some schools that don't request outside recommenders, but again, I've found that a majority of schools do. So for those students that really have adults in their lives that they're very close to and they feel could speak to them and the skills that they might offer and talents that they might offer a college, that's certainly acceptable and encouraged by colleges and universities. So feel free to take advantage of that on Common App. Early decision. Many schools have different deadlines, as I mentioned before. Some schools have what's called an early decision process. And I do want to point that out because that is unique from the other admissions deadlines and contracts that are out there for different colleges. If you apply to a school that offers early decision, really oftentimes what that means is that admissions agreement is binding. If you are accepted to that institution, by applying early decision, you are saying that you will 100% attend that school the following school year. So this is a binding agreement. For that reason, early decision schools ask parents and school counselors to sign off on your early decision agreement so that they understand that students, parents, and counselors have all spoken to the applicant and students and everybody is on the same page in terms of this binding agreement. The advantage for some schools that have an early decision option is because they know that you are committing to attending their institution. Oftentimes they will accept a larger percentage of their applicant pool as part of the early decision class. That will vary school to school. So can this be a huge advantage at many schools? Not necessarily. But with all else being equal, if you and your parent are focused on one school and it meets all of your criteria and you want every advantage and opportunity you can have to receive an offer of acceptance to that institution, you can consider applying early decision. The downside is you're accepting admissions to a school before you even understand what the financial implications are, for instance. So there are certainly downsides, and you're locked into a decision in December of your senior year, as opposed to visiting more schools and weighing your options until the spring, April or May, are the deadlines by which most schools want an admissions a student to make a firm commitment. So early decision has advantages and disadvantages, but students, if you are thinking about applying early decisions, certainly have a conversation with your counselor, since we're going to have to sign off through Common App that we have had that conversation with you. Naviance. Naviance is the platform that we use. It's the program that we use in school to send all of your documents electronically. Naviance has a lot of features. There are personality profiles. You can do research on all of these schools that you might be considering. And Naviance also has a feature called eDocs, which is, of course, short for electronic documents. That is a service that works with Common App and other schools to deliver everything the schools need electronically directly through our Naviance platform. So teachers and counselors upload school materials to Naviance. We share Naviance accounts with students. Students will match their Common App and Naviance accounts, and then this will allow us to send in an expedited manner all of your materials electronically, either directly to Common App or directly to non-Common App schools that will accept electronic submission. Naviance is great because when we're sending things through Naviance, we can track and see when they've been received. It's a wonderful feature. But the first thing you should do in Naviance when you're actually adding colleges that you've listed in Common App is match your Common App and Naviance accounts by entering your Common App credentials. Once you do that, your Common App account will be able to talk to your Naviance account and vice versa. I also embedded on this last screen a video where you can that just goes into a little more detail about what that process looks like. I've also got a video on this slide requesting college transcripts, what you need to do for us. Basically, it's a two-step process. Number one, you would list colleges you're applying to. Again, that's a list that you can edit, so you can delete schools and add schools throughout the fall. And then once you add a college that you're applying to, you can also request that we send a transcript. You need to do both of these things. You need to add colleges. You need to add your college to colleges I'm applying to and request the transcript in order to initiate that process for your school counselor. Another thing that trips up seniors traditionally is their Common App account. Schools listed on their Common App account don't necessarily match the schools that they've listed on their Naviance accounts, and that creates issues. So I will remind parents and students this evening, and your counselors will remind you throughout the fall. If you're adding schools or making changes to schools on your Common App account, you need to go over to your Naviance account and make sure that those lists match, at least for Common App. Okay, we can't send anything. We can't send things through Common App if your Common App school is not listed in Naviance. So first thing you need to do when you're making changes in Common App is jump over to Naviance and make sure that those schools are matching up. That creates a lot of headaches for you, and making sure those lists match is really important for your counselors. Requesting teacher recommendations. I know most of you have talked to teachers. You may have filled out teacher recommendation surveys on Naviance, which is great. We've turned on the feature today that will allow you, when you're adding colleges that you're applying to also request letters of recommendation. You'll have two options when you're requesting letters of recommendation for the schools you're applying to. One is a general option. It just means that you send a teacher a general request saying, I want you to send your recommendation to all colleges I'm applying to. And then there is a college specific option. You can also pick and choose for each school you're applying to which teacher recommendations you want sent. Now, students and parents, you might ask, why would I use that college specific option? And the answer is this: some schools only require or will accept one letter of recommendation. So in those cases, and you'll be able to see this when you're adding colleges to Naviance, you'll have an opportunity to choose which teacher you want to send your recommendation. If you're just asking for general letters of recommendation, the recommendation that will go will just be the first one that's uploaded by your teachers. What percentage of students request general letters of recommendation versus specific letters of recommendation? I'd say it's probably around 50%. So is it a big deal either way? Does it really matter too much? Absolutely not. Your teachers are writing about who you are as students, and you cannot view those letters of recommendation. However, if you have a school that you're applying to that's maybe an engineering school, and it's really important to you that your math teacher's recommendation is the one recommendation that they accept, we understand that. So we know that letters of recommendation you might want to be specific with in some instances. Again, if you have any questions about how to request letters of recommendation, there's a video linked here right on this slide. Counselors and teachers ask for student surveys to be completed prior to our recommendations being sent. Counselor surveys, either from parents or students, give us a better idea of what you're doing outside school, what makes you tick. We certainly see you in a certain lens, but we know other people in your lives, including your parents, maybe including your friends, see you in other ways. And there are things that we might not know about you. So when we're writing our letter of recommendations, we love to have input from students, of course, and certainly parents as well. Parent surveys, me personally, I don't require a survey be entered from each of my parents, but all of the counselors in the department require students complete their counselor recommendation survey prior to us writing your recommendation. So before you make any transcript requests from us, make sure that counselor recommendation survey is completed. Similarly, we have two teacher recommendation surveys that are listed in here as well. All of the teachers that have Naviance accounts in our building have access to the teacher recommendation surveys. So if a teacher has asked you to complete that survey, you can go ahead and do that. We understand that some teachers in the building have their own surveys as well. So just follow whatever directions your teachers have for you. And also, please communicate with your teachers throughout the fall, certainly when it comes to maybe your earliest college deadline. Yes, your teachers will be able to see that when they log on to their Naviance accounts, but they might be writing recommendations for 30 different students. So if your earliest deadline is October 15th, it would be a great idea to send your teacher a reminder a week or two before that recommendation is due, and just remind them that you've got a deadline coming up. Once teachers upload your recommendation materials once, those will go out to all of your schools after that date. So all teachers need to be aware of is your earliest college deadline. So that's what we would say about that. The transcript request summaries. And again, I know I'm going through this a little bit fast, but you can obviously revisit some of these things. What should students be doing throughout the fall? You should be adding colleges to your Common App account. Once you add at least one college to your Common App account, you'll have the ability to sign your FERPA waiver in Common App. You only need to do that once. Once you sign your FERPA waiver for one school, it stays signed for all of your schools. If you're considering early decision, talk to your counselor, but students and parents will have to sign an early decision agreement through Common App, and counselors will have to sign off on that through Naviance as well. Complete your counselor recommendation survey in Naviance. Certainly, if you haven't done that already, please complete that prior to that initial transcript request. And importantly, match your Common App schools in Naviance and Common App. Now, again, Naviance talks to Common App. So many times when you link your Naviance and Common App accounts and you make changes to your schools in Common App, those two platforms are supposed to speak to each other. So you might find that your Naviance schools update to match your Common App schools. But just take a look at both just to make sure that everything looks similar. Do that every once in a while. Add colleges I'm applying to in Naviance. That will allow you to request teacher recommendations and initial transcripts in Naviance for each of those schools. So it reads like 8 steps, but it's really pretty simple when you take a look at both platforms. Both the Common App platform and the Naviance platform are very, very user-friendly. They are not complicated. And again, we've been working with Naviance for 25 years now. It's very user-friendly, and the steps that we ask you to follow are pretty simple. So you shouldn't have an issue with any of these, but when you have questions about Naviance, certainly come down and see us. Important reminders. Remember, there are 375 seniors in our senior class. Counselors will have anywhere between 40 and 60 seniors. Most of you will be requesting transcripts and college supporting materials right around the same time, between early October and early November. So with that in mind, you should complete your counselor and teacher recommendation surveys in Naviance now. That's something that you should really do in the next week or two. Once you add colleges to Naviance, if you've got a deadline, all right, these colleges should be listed in Naviance and these transcripts should be requested in Naviance 3 weeks prior to your earliest deadline. Because again, if you multiply 50 students on a counselor's caseload times an average of 10 to 15 schools per student, those are a lot of materials that we have to manage. We cannot have students coming in the day before applications are due and asking for transcript requests because it's difficult for you to cut the line in front of someone who's really followed those deadlines that we ask for. Most college deadlines are at the earliest November 1st, November 15th. However, there are schools out there, specifically schools like University of North Carolina, I believe Georgia Tech, some Southern schools that have October 15th deadlines. So if you have at least one school with an October 15th deadline, or a school that maybe you've already applied to and you want us to send out transcripts sooner rather than later, you should do all this and add that school to your Common App account, put in that transcript request now. So that because we're only probably 4 weeks, we're just a little bit over 4 weeks in advance of the October 15th deadline. So the sooner you get those transcripts requests in, the sooner that your counselor will be able to prioritize your materials and get those out by the college deadline. If you're applying early decision to a Common App school, again, I've said this before, you do need to sign the ED agreement in Common App prior to making that request in Naviance, okay? We need that to be indicated so that we can sign off on that so that your Common App materials can be sent. I said before that most schools accept Common App. So I'd say 1,100 to 1,200 schools nationally accept Common App, and 90+% of our students will apply to Common App schools. Maybe 10% accept electronic submission, but they aren't on the Common App. There are a few schools that are a little bit different, and I'm just pointing out one here in this slideshow because Georgetown is probably the most popular outlier school with a different type of application procedure of the schools that our students apply to each year. So for those of you that might be considering Georgetown, they don't accept Common App or electronic delivery through our Naviance platform. So students, if you're applying to Georgetown, you're going to complete everything through the Georgetown portal, and you're going to request teacher recommendations and your counselor recommendation directly through the Georgetown portal. We will then get a direct link to Georgetown, your counselor or your teacher, and we will submit documents that way. Why is Georgetown so different? That's a wonderful question. They have confounded us for decades and decades now, but they remain steadfast in their desire to be different and to be unique. So if you were a Georgetown prospective applicant, just know that the rules of the road for Georgetown are just a little bit different. And we do realize also that a lot of students are applying to schools internationally. Sometimes schools in England or schools in Australia, Canada are going to have some slightly different criteria in terms of how to apply. That's completely okay. As counselors, we are familiar with some of these schools, and we will work with students throughout the fall to make sure that we are getting everything to them through the platforms and in the manner in which they request and require all of these documents. Some terms, and then these next few slides are just a little bit, I'll bounce all over the place a little bit here, but something that's gained popularity in the last few years is called the self-reported academic record. And I mentioned this probably in the second slide of the night. The self-reported academic record is exactly that. It's something that colleges are using instead of and in place of high schools sending students' grades through their transcript directly to schools. Now, why would schools want students to self-report their grades instead of accepting a transcript from a high school? Well, it's really simple. Schools have students applying from hundreds and even thousands of different high schools. And each one of those high schools across the country and internationally have different grading scales, different credit scales, different titles of courses, and those are very hard for schools to decode. So about a decade ago, a few schools, Rutgers was one of the first ones in the country, started to say, you know what, we'd like students to put their school transcript information directly into our portal so that everything looks the same coming out. They piloted this for a few years, and they found that 99.9% of the time, students accurately replicated their their high school transcripts in this SRAR portal. Colleges that accept SRAR will still require that the high school send your final transcript if you were attending that school prior to your final admission. But again, this is an easy way for a lot of these bigger schools to consolidate this transcript information and put it in a common language that they can understand, and have the students and parents really do that legwork instead of having their admissions staff try to decode all these high school transcripts. So popular SRAR schools include Rutgers, Penn State, University of Pittsburgh, University of Delaware, a lot of schools that our kids apply to. So chances are the majority of seniors are going to have at least one school, probably Rutgers, that requires the SRAR. I've got the SRAR account basics. I've got a link here on this slide. It's pretty easy to do. You can complete the SRAR for almost all of these schools after you complete their application. In fact, if you've completed their application and you haven't filled out the SRAR, they will send you a direct link to their SRAR portal. So you can do the SRAR in advance or after you've applied. The SRAR, again, like Common App, you will complete once, and then you can send that to multiple schools. College admissions assessments. I've talked for 35 minutes and haven't mentioned anything about the SAT or ACT. And that's great, because as a school counselor, I don't necessarily think that these standardized tests really reflect who you guys are as candidates or as prospective college applicants. But they do play an important role in the process for a lot of these schools, mainly comparing grades and course rigor from one high school to the other. We have high schools all across the country that teach in very different ways. They have different levels of rigor, and it's hard for colleges to understand the difference between an A in West Windsor-Plainsboro High School North versus an A at a high school in Boise, Idaho. A standard test that most students take is a way to kind of give them a little bit more information in that regard. So for that reason, college admissions assessments are still a thing. They took a big hit during the COVID years when almost all schools went test optional. But the latest trend over the last year or two is more and more schools are going back to test encouraged or test required. So even though 2/3 of schools are test optional for the class of 2025, We encourage you, if you're considering going test optional, to read each school's policy very carefully when it comes to test policy. We find that you might find that some schools, if you don't report your test scores, it might be to your disadvantage. There's a US News article that I think really does a good job speaking to this, and so I've got that linked here. Summer colleges are requiring test scores again, what it means for applicants. So it's a quick read, and that will just give you a little bit of an overview. If you have questions or you're considering going test optional for certain schools, again, talk to your school counselor. We can give you a little bit of insight, and you can also call the school's admissions office, and they can give you their best insight. They're not here to be college admissions officers are wonderful people. They're not there to be evasive. They will answer your questions clearly, and they know their admissions policies and procedures the best. So a lot of times when you're talking to us, your school counselor, about college admissions, we're going to advise you to reach out directly to that particular school to get a specific answer that's going to answer your question the best. Also, a frequent question we get is AP exam scores. AP exam scores do not play a part in the admissions process at the overwhelming majority of schools. But if you do send your AP exam scores along with at the same time as your applications, schools could take those into consideration. For the most part, schools will look at your AP exam scores once you've been admitted in order to possibly award college credit for your high school courses. All right, the summary of the important parts. So there are a lot of balls in the air here. When a college gets your application, they're going to expect some different supplemental materials. So here's who's responsible for these different parts. The school counselor, for most colleges, is responsible for sending a recommendation, your high school transcript, which is your grades, and the courses you enrolled in, something called a secondary school report, and a school profile. Those two things describe what type of high school we are, how many honors and AP courses we offer, how many students are in the building, what type of town we're located in, all kinds of demographic information that gives them a little bit better of an idea of who we are. Now, local schools like Rutgers or Rider or the College of New Jersey, they don't need to look at our school profile or our secondary school report. Schools that get multiple applications from our students every year don't really need to consult with that. But there are some schools out there that might not be familiar with West Windsor-Plainsboro, where we are, what our average student looks like. So we share with them our school profile and our secondary school report. Our school profile is posted on our website, and it's updated yearly, every October. So you can feel free to look at that profile at any time you want. A lot of times schools will want mid-year grades as well, so that they can check up on students and see how you're doing. Now, students, you're in control of who you want us to send your mid-year grades to. So when you fast forward to January, we're going to revisit that conversation. And if students, you are interested in having your grades sent to any of your schools, we will have a form to complete. A more recent trend is even first marking period grades. That's less popular for colleges because many of you are applying before first marking period even ends. But you will on occasion run into a school, students that are asking for your first marking period grades. So again, stay tuned for more information on that later in November, and we will share something with you that describes how you can request first marking period grades if you have a school that wants them. Teachers are simply uploading their recommendations for you. They'll do that directly through Naviance. And for students, obviously, your application is the main thing that these schools are looking for. So you're going to send your applications 99 times out of 100 electronically directly to your colleges. For colleges that want the self-reported academic record, you're going to send that as well. And you're also going to send your SAT and ACT scores directly to colleges. We are not responsible for sending your standardized test scores. Those are your property. You can choose which test scores you send to different colleges. So whether it's your SAT scores through the College Board website or your ACT scores through the ACT website, those sites have pretty easy features where you can request those scores be sent. Again, we would ask that you request those scores be sent well in advance of your school's deadlines. But if you're taking the SAT or the ACT this October or early November, generally that is plenty of time for your colleges to receive and consider those scores when you are applying. Students, counselors, and teachers, we're all working toward a common goal. I mentioned that there are a lot of materials coming at these colleges from different directions. It doesn't necessarily matter if the student application gets there first, or a teacher recommendation gets there first, or a transcript gets there first. If it's a Common App school, everything goes through Common App at the same time. If it's a non-Common App school, they will start a file for you, whether they get your application first or whether they get a teacher recommendation for you first. A couple more topics that I just want to touch on, and this isn't necessarily germane to the college application process, but I'm sure if you're a parent like me, it's first and foremost in your mind. This year's free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA form, will be released on December 1. I should add 2024. It was also released on it was supposed to be released on December 1, 2023, and that was actually delayed until this past January. If you are a parent who has a student in college, you will recall how much of a debacle that was. I'm hoping for the class of 2025 that this rollout this fall is going to be a little bit easier. Initially, the form was supposed to be released on October 1st. Again, that's been pushed back to a hard release of December 1st and a soft release of October and November. So you might get an invitation to complete your FAFSA prior to December 1st. But December 1st is the date that they're giving us for when everybody will be able to complete this form. The 25-26 form, along with last year's form, has been greatly simplified. As a parent of a college student, I filled that out last year, and it was a lot easier than in years past. So there are some important changes to the formulas they use for federal aid, and I believe that I've got a hyperlink to that, to a good article here on this slide, so you can take a look at that. The agency in the state of New Jersey that handles financial aid for our state institutions is called HESA, the New Jersey Higher Education Student Assistance Authority. They're going to offer free financial aid workshops throughout the year. You can see those on their website. We'll offer a financial aid workshop at some point during the fall that we will advertise to you as well. And also, one last fun fact. The state of New Jersey passed legislation earlier this year requiring that all graduates of the class of 2025 complete the FAFSA. We will put out additional communication during the winter with regard to that mandate, and it shouldn't be overwhelming because there will be an ability to waive that requirement for some parents. But just know, if you hear about that in the news or on the radio, that the expectation is from the state of New Jersey that every high school senior is going to complete that FAFSA form prior to graduation this year. Just a few final thoughts from me. Number one, I hope that everybody has enjoyed the first week of school. Just from my observations over the first week, I don't think I can ever remember a smoother opening. Our senior class is wonderful. You guys have done a great job over the first week. I love watching you enjoy your out to lunch privileges every day, enjoying all the new things that are going on in our building. And there's a ton of spirit in our senior class. So the counselors and I are very excited that we're going through this process with you. We hope that your classes are all going very well. And we do want to give you just a little tip that you do not want to drop a class during your senior year after you send out your transcripts. So we know you can't make any schedule changes once the year has started, but we also don't want you to be planning on possibly dropping a class second half of the school year after you've sent out applications. That's information that's going to need to be shared with your colleges. So just know that that's highly discouraged. Senior year grades, I mentioned earlier, marking period 1 and mid-year grades, we'll be able to get those to schools for you if those schools do require that. We have what I think is a very helpful document that our counselors have put together called the College Process Answers, and that hyperlink is here. We've put links to that on that one-page document to a lot of different resources, including tonight's presentation, that we think you will find very helpful as you go through this process. We will also link tonight's Zoom presentation as well when that comes out next week. But if there's something in this presentation that you want to go back to, or it's confused you, or you're not sure what I said about FAFSA or anything else, the College Process Answers is really the first resource that you should consult, and it's designed from us to be kind of a one-stop shop for all things college admissions related at West Windsor-Plainsboro. We also have a lot of college representatives that are going to come visit during our lunch period during the fall. And those college visits and that schedule is posted on your Naviance account. These visits are going to start actually next Monday. So seniors, if you have schools that you're really interested in, or schools that maybe you just want a little bit more information about, check out our list of college lunch visits. Chances are many of those schools are actually going to come right here. And some of those representatives from those schools are going to be the people that do the first read on your application if you submit that application this fall. So if you've got a school that you're really interested in and they're visiting, please don't go out to lunch that day. Take advantage of that opportunity to come to the counseling office or to A101, wherever we're hosting these representatives, and introduce yourself and ask some last minute questions. It's just a great opportunity. Also, we have yet another Google Classroom for you, but this is a real good one. It's a class of 2025 counseling classroom. This is our classroom just for seniors, for all of the counselor seniors. And I've got the join code here. We will post relevant information with the college application and high school graduation process throughout the fall and the spring. I'd say that we've got at least 100 members of that classroom. I'd love to have well over 300 by the end of this week. So again, we post a lot of important things fairly frequently during the course of the year on that Google Classroom. So if seniors, if you join that counseling classroom, you're not going to miss out on anything significant that's going on with regards to high school graduation or college admissions. Finally, counselors will host Q&A sessions for their students later this week. And you will receive information directly from your school counselor with more details on that process, because it'll vary a little bit from counselor to counselor. But again, we understand that everybody's journey is completely different. And seniors, we absolutely expect that you're going to have questions and that you're going to stop by our office on multiple occasions saying, I've got something that I need to ask. And then you might stop by 30 minutes later and ask another question. And then you might send a Google chat 30 minutes after that. Don't apologize. That's completely okay. This is your first time going through the process, and we expect that. And again, we enjoy walking through this process with you. The West Windsor-Plainsboro College Fair is an opportunity for us to invite and host over 150 of the most popular colleges in the nation, and many colleges that you all are applying to. I'm sure many of you attended this last year, and some of you attended sophomore year as well. This year's QR code is posted here on this slide. You can also visit strivefair.com to sign up for an account. Using StriveFair to go through this college, go through the college fair process and to share your information with colleges is a really great opportunity for you. So that's coming up on October 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. Again, I'm sure most in the audience have done that once already. If you're definitely applying to certain schools, it's never a bad idea to ask those questions that you might have about the application process, or to just spend some FaceTime, or maybe look for some additional schools that you might want to apply to throughout the fall. So we have a lot of opportunities for you, and I do thank you for hanging in with me, because I know this is a lot of information. Again, utilize the resources that are posted on the College Answers doc, and we will share these resources as well in the senior Google Classroom within the next week. And on the YouTube channel for the district, we'll have this presentation posted, and we'll link it in all of these places as well. I want to thank my colleagues again for monitoring the chat. Again, our apologies if we couldn't get to all of the Q&A. You absolutely have an opportunity, students or parents, to reach out to your child's counselor, or students reach out to your counselor directly to ask follow-up questions. That is really what we're here for throughout the fall. So with that said, I'd like to conclude this evening's program. I want to thank everybody for being an attentive audience, and we really look forward to everything that senior year has to offer for your class of 2025, homecoming, college fair, college applications, everything else that between now and graduation. And your school counselors are here to support you in all of those endeavors. So please have a wonderful and safe evening, and we will be speaking with you soon. Thank you.